It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Expresso right here on SABC3. Now it's time for our weekly health segment, and today we focus our attention on those things that dangle off the end of your legs. They're known as feet. And today we're joined by podiatrist Dr. Brandon Magan, and hopefully he can help us start our day off on the right foot.
Not the left.
There. How are you, Brandon? So good to have you on our show.
Good morning, guys.
Lovely to have you. This is a very interesting segment. We haven't addressed feet, I think, in quite a while on your Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Corns, calluses, nails,
Yes.
favorite topic.
Let's start at the beginning. So what exactly, it sounds horrible. What is a corn? How is it formed?
It's a horrible thing, as you correctly
Yeah.
said, Ewan. A corn is a very thick, hard layer of skin that builds up over time over an area that's undergoing significant pressure. And it's a terrible thing because people are afflicted by it terribly.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough,
Is that it?
no, that
That's
could be
more
a
of a-
corn.
yeah.
Is it because it looks like a
That actually
corn
could be a
kernel?
wart. That could look like a wart.
Oh, yeah,
so what's
yeah.
interesting is that that's not necessarily over a bony prominence. A corn is always over an area of high pressure.
Okay.
So over knuckles, under the ball of the foot, in between the toes. Where that was, you could see it was an area where there's less pressure.
Okay.
So it's a buildup of hard skin that comes as a result of increased pressure.
And I suppose that's the difference, because I always wanted to know what's the difference between a corn and the difference between a callus.
So in fact, it's the same thing in essence. The truth is, the difference is the corn pushes into the flesh, the top
Okay.
layer, so it feels
Yeah.
like a glass or a stone,
Wow,
where a
really?
callus stays on the surface. So it's over a broader area. So the pressure is dispersed, where a corn is direct, specific, pinpoint
Yeah.
pressure.
Okay.
So if you look at it like corns, what will cause it, basically? I mean, is it a shoe pressure? Is it
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
and yes, and yes. So corn is always high pressure, always. So
Okay.
those shoes, Leanne, I'm sorry, are going to cause
Oh, no.
corns on the sides of your
Yes,
toes.
yes.
But also, for example, because of the heel, you're putting pressure on the ball of the foot. I'm picking on you because you
Like,
wore
well,
those
everyone
shoes.
just laughed. I'm like, it's a real thing,
because
guys. Come on.
comfortable.
You chose to wear those shoes, right? Knowing I'm coming. Yours are better, Ewan. So if there's high pressure, what happens if a patient's got deformity or some kind of change to their foot, and there's a toe that's sitting like this and the shoe is rubbing on top? You know, it could be a good shoe, but it's any kind of friction or pressure
I
that's
see.
going to cause that. So that's in essence what causes a corn. And
So-
everybody can get them.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So here's another one. Ingrow toenails or ingrow nails. I mean, it could be potentially very painful. All right. So what causes the ingrow nail, and also how can you prevent it? Because I know my mom told me when I was a kid, it's the way you cut your nails.
Yes. So first thing is I wouldn't wish an ingrown nail on my worst enemy.
Yeah,
Right.
true
Because
story.
I've seen grown men cry. It's very, just that sort of thing like that is
Ouch.
incredibly painful. It's incessant and it's just recalcitrant.
Yeah.
So an ingrown nail is when the side of the nail simply pushes into the flesh, and as the nail's growing forward, that little nail spike continues to grow through. So you're being stabbed in essence by your own toenail
Very
at
slowly.
the tip there where your nerves are so dramatically rich.
Yeah.
So it's a horrible thing. So the most common causes are, as you correctly said, Ewan, is incorrect cutting. We see this every day. People, the way they cut at various angles because they can't reach their toes. Elderly, people with whoops, people with back issues, people with eye problems. Multifocals are a big issue. You can't focus on the nail. The type of clipper they use means that you're cutting at all odd angles. You just need to miss one last millimeter of that on the side of the nail. And as it grows forwards, later on, it's going to penetrate your flesh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
Those
one
are the
more
most
reason
common
to do
causes.
those sit-ups, eh? Get down to
Agreed.
your
Get
toenails.
rid of your book. Yeah.
Wow. I love this topic because I think a lot of us take our feet for granted. The
do.
fact that they work really, really hard.
They do.
And we don't often give them the care that we should. So we're going to continue this talk a little bit more with Dr. Brandon. And of course, if you have any feet-related issues, this is the time you want to give us a call, 083-913-3728. Do you want to talk about corns, calluses, ingrown toenails? This is the
Get in
space. It's a
there.
safe space. We'll definitely chat with the doctor in a little bit.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Time for us to return to our health segment with Dr. Brandon Magan in the house. We're talking about foot health and, of course, things like calluses, corns, feet pain. Dr. Magan, thank you so much for being here with us. You know what? Like we said, we sometimes disregard how important our feet are and everything that they've got to go through in a day just to get us from point A to point B. But let's talk about heel pain, for instance. I come from a family that have very, very specific foot needs, so I understand what bad feet are like. But heel pain, like, where does it begin? How can it be alleviated?
Heel pain is probably the most common thing any podiatrist anywhere in the world will get asked. So many people listening right now are suffering with heel pain.
Wow.
Heel pain is a broad topic because it can be under the heel, it can be at the back of the heel,
Yeah.
it can be around the periphery of the heel, but the most common one is underneath the heel itself.
Yeah,
where
like
you're standing on.
there's a specific points.
There is exactly
Yeah.
a point, you're 100% right. So heel pain is most commonly, there are many causes, but I'm going to talk about the more common one, Heel pain, like that's on the outside of the heel,
Yeah.
but you
Yes.
can see he's rubbing on the back of the heel. So underneath the heel, the most common point is where a ligament attaches to the heel bone. At a certain point, that's the point you're probably referring to, Ewan, that over time pulls too tight, and there's still small micro tearing of that ligament itself. The most common part of the ligament, a big part to tear, is at the heel bone insertion. This ligament traverses the whole arch of the foot to the ball, so it's a very important ligament. It provides the base of the foot, which in essence is like a triangle shape, as you can see.
Yeah.
This forms the base of the triangle, giving stability, support. So this ligament, known as the plantar fascia, is most commonly involved in heel pain. It causes tremendous problems. The most common thing that people tell you is when they get out of bed in the morning or after sitting for a period and standing back up, that's where they feel the most
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
And as they get moving, it eases up a bit. So to avoid this, obviously you don't want heel pain at all. No one wants heel pain. Remember, you're on your feet all the time. Just simple basic things like better shoes, good shoes. We'll talk about shoes, of course, later.
Yeah.
What is it that you're doing, the activity, and are you wearing a shoe that matches that activity? If you're, for example, playing squash, we wouldn't do it barefoot. Think
Yeah.
of the impact going through your feet.
Yeah.
Or running on AstroTurf, you wouldn't do that in slip-slops. Those are things that will strain the plantar fascia and cause it to start to tear.
So at the end of the day, it's really all about just keeping the leg muscles healthy and in check, and make sure that you stretch also enough to kind of just ease the tension on those tendons.
You're going to hear me say this again, Ewan, just now, but sensibility, common sense is the most important thing. Common sense is like deodorant. The people who need it most never use it. That's my
true.
take. Because if, for example, you're going to play squash, for example, like I said, in flip-flops, you know, the muscles that are strong are going to take strain where there's vulnerability.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Keeping healthy and sensible is key, but matching the activity to the right shoe is better than anything you could possibly do longer term.
So let's talk about that. I mean, you mean different shoes. Is that kind of a go-to option for people wanting to alleviate foot pain in general? I mean, if they find that their feet's paining for some reason, a change of shoe might kind of do it for them.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you think about it, someone will tell you that a certain shoe, say this blue one, is most comfortable. Does it mean it's the most comfortable shoe involved, or is it an indictment on the rest of the shoes they've been wearing before? So is it the shoe that's matching the activity? So if, for example, take a housewife, you know, she's on her feet the whole day, all day.
Yeah.
If she's wearing slippers or slip-slops, can you imagine that amount of load on her feet with the type of shoe is not going to do her any good? So absolutely right. So if, for example, I had to say to her, if I could convince her to wear a pair of, say, running shoes, just arguably just one shoe, and then do the amount of activity she's doing, surely she'll have more comfort and more support.
Yeah.
So it's not to say it'll cure the problem, but certainly alleviate, and certainly go a long way to alleviate the problem.
Very, very interesting. Well, we are joined by Dr. Brandon Magan. Of course, we're talking about foot issues. It's things that affect all of us and really can affect our general sense of happiness and well-being as well. If you have any questions for the doctor, you can give us a call on 083 913 3728. I want to talk swollen feet after this. Do you have any problems with swollen feet? We'll talk a bit more in a little bit.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. You're tuning into your Feel Good Breakfast Show. We're talking about feet on your Feel Good Breakfast Show this morning. If you have any questions with regards to heel pain, we spoke about corns, we spoke about ingrown nails as well. Let us know. 083 913 3728 is the number. Dr. Brandon Magan is here, podiatrist. He's answering all of your questions this morning.
I feel like I missed my calling in life. I feel like I could be like a really great foot doctor as well.
And we
I
could
don't
swap.
know.
We could swap.
I love feet. I love feet. Okay, so we mentioned swelling in the beginning, but I want to speak specifically about people who suffer from diabetes.
Yes.
When it comes to that, what is the link between diabetes and your feet, and is swelling a massive thing that you have to deal with?
So, firstly, if I may, diabetes is probably the the highest risk factor of our practice daily. The link between diabetes and feet is massive. I consider them a marriage that's divorced. In other words, feet and diabetes don't go well together if you don't look after your diabetes.
Okay.
Worldwide, the biggest cause of hospital admissions worldwide that are not traumatic related are diabetic foot complications, because the risks and the costs are enormous. So the swelling is one part of it, you're absolutely right, Leanne. But the more common issues with diabetes, the end result is things like ulceration, and then infection, and then obviously we're trying to avoid gangrene, which we all know leads to things like amputation.
Of course.
Those are the big things, because if we get to that point, just an ulcer will cost more money than, if I remember right, about 6 months' worth of salary. That's the average of worldwide to repair, to get right. And then the resultant effect of that ulcer is that at least 60% of those ulcers will recur, and then most of those will land up in an amputation at some point in this patient's life. Okay. So the link between diabetes and feet cannot be underestimated in how they should be working in unison, not against each other.
That is a very interesting one. Listen, here's something interesting. I haven't heard this kind of phrase before. Peripheral vascular disease.
Yes.
What on earth does that mean when it comes to your feet?
Okay, so periphery means the ends of our body, periphery, the end of anything. So in peripheral vascular disease, we're referring down to the bottom of the legs and the feet in particular. The vascular concept is the blood vessels that bring blood back from the heart, back from the foot to the heart. The arterioles are the the vessels that bring blood to the foot. So if there's PVD or peripheral vascular disease, there's an issue with the blood returning against gravity, up against gravity, back from the heart. So the blood, in essence, stays swollen. The leg stays swollen. It stays static, stasis in the leg. So you don't have a perfect circulation. Remember, blood's got to come down and come back up again.
Yeah.
So it afflicts people in many respects, in many ways.
How do you treat that? I mean, is there a cure for something like that?
So PVD, peripheral vascular disease, is a chronic condition. So it's happened over a significant period of time. The most common thing with a pure PVD, if there's no complications like arterial disease or an arterial component, is to try and compress the leg. So we use stockings, vascular stockings. They're graded, meaning they're tighter towards the ankle and looser toward the knee. So they're squeezing blood. Remember, you've got to go up against gravity.
Yeah.
If we could walk on our hands, not that we should, but if we could, the blood will fall down.
Yeah.
And in essence, you've cured it, but you'll cause PVD in your arms, right?
Yeah.
So gravity is a big component. And we need healthy veins with their valves inside to return the blood against gravity up. So exercise is the key ingredient. Because you're constantly moving, requiring your blood to flow, which means you're asking blood to get down, so it's got to come back up in an equal direction, an equal way.
Sure. Very, very informative stuff. I could talk about this all day. Well, we're going to continue with our talk one more time with the doctor. After this, we're going to be chatting about sports and how your feet is affected through things like jogging, and also what kind of feet do you have? Do you have a flat foot? Do you need an instep? And of course, how that affects your walking and your posture and your hips and all of those things. All that more coming up on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Do give us a call, 083 913 3728.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Well, we are back with our health specialist, Dr. Brandon Megan, and we've got Desmond from PE on the line right now. Desmond, good morning. What is your question or comment for the doctor?
Very, very good morning to you, and thank you for your program.
Thank you, Desmond.
About a year ago, I was bumped with a trolley laden with fruit and veg on my Achilles tendon. It gave me a bit of a problem, and I was told by a physiotherapist that it sometimes heals permanently, and it sometimes recurs. Now, it's giving me problems on and off every now and so often. Is there anything I can do to sort it out?
So, hi, Desmond. Thanks for the question. If I understood you right, you said you had an issue with your Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
That it's bugging you
bumped.
constantly,
It was
bumped,
bumped,
yeah.
yeah.
So we make the assumption that it wasn't torn, it wasn't dramatically injured, Desmond. But the most important thing with this sort of issue is to understand patients. Achilles tendons, being the strongest tendon in the body, is the most vulnerable to injury and takes the longest in most respects to heal. So one of the things that I would suggest is to reduce the tension or the load on the tendon. So if, for example, you go to a podiatrist in PE and ask for a slight heel raise, obviously both sides so you're not imbalanced, because if you raise your heel even just a few millimeters, what you're going to do is reduce the tension on the Achilles.
Yeah.
So whilst you're walking and using the tendon, you're allowing it chance to heal. Because without that, if your heel goes all the way to the ground as it's supposed to, if there's already an issue with the Achilles, to load it as it should be with an injury means you're not going to allow it to consistently repair.
Yeah.
So a small heel raise. Then the other thing, of course, is physio is key, because remember, it helps. The Achilles is linked to all the muscles at the back of the leg. So to address that properly, a physio will help you with the correct exercises that will help to understand which muscles are contributing or could aid in the repair of the Achilles or reduce the tension and load. So I would suggest podiatrist and physiotherapy key ingredients now.
Yeah, you get
Very,
where the
very
saying the Achilles heel comes from, eh? Because I mean, it's not to be underestimated, that's
Yes.
for sure. Listen, let's talk about jogging athletes. Here we have, like the debate continues. How bad is long distance running specifically for you? I mean, we had the Two Oceans now, ultramarathons, the Comrades coming up as well.
Yes.
For these athletes, I mean, what do you say to them?
So I am an athlete myself. I run Comrades and do all that stuff, and Ironman and Oceans. The important thing is, again, remember we spoke about common sense and deodorant. And this is what I tell most patients. When we look at these runners, some of them shouldn't even be running because their mechanics are so faulty that they should first get themselves looked at. So that if they want to run, they can, but they need to get their expectations managed, number one. Can they do a distance if there's mechanically some degree of unsoundness? And then the most common thing is to address any imbalance or load. So the right pair of shoes, the right type of insert if it's required, will make running so much easier and better.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, I've run a few comrades, I've done lots of ultras and stuff, and I'm absolutely fine, and I'm not a light guy. And I'll continue to run. Why? Because I make sure that the one thing that's right on my feet.
Yeah.
I don't care the shirt that I wear, I don't care the shorts. What's important to me is the only tool I require, and that's the right pair of shoes, and for my instance, a pair of orthotics that will address my imbalance. And if I keep those two up to date, the right shoes, when I need to replace them,
Yeah.
when my orthotics are down, then I could run for years without real issue. But the running controversy you were talking about is when people get issues with knees, hips, back, and most often it's because potentially there was an imbalance maybe in their biomechanics, in like we were saying earlier, limb length difference, or some issue that then over time takes extreme load on that knee or that whatever, and then they blame running.
Yeah.
Sure.
And running gets a bad rap mostly.
But it needs to be addressed. I mean,
You
it
have
could be
to
a very
be
small
addressed.
difference. We're talking millimeters here, so make sure that you know your stuff.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Brandon, for being here. This was sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. This was
pleasure.
absolutely amazing,
a
and
pleasure.
we really, really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Talking feet is so important. We must never, never disregard our feet. Of course, our health specialist, Dr. Brandon Magan, in the house, and we were talking about the health of your feet. Hopefully, we can do it again sometime soon.
Kyk na jou voete.